So, as you understand, the focus of today's program is the birth registration process in Ontario. And before I talk about how amazing the new system is, I want to remind everybody that the old system still exists for those who need it. If you're a foreigner, depending on the country you live in, you may require a judicial court order. We still have that in place, as we always have. The new system is an administrative one. It is faster, it is less expensive, it is simpler, and it is available to all people who reside in Canada whose babies are born in the province of Ontario. It is also available to foreigners whose babies are born in the province of Ontario, as long as their country, their native country where they will return with their baby, will accept the administrative order as opposed to a judicial order. So, for example, if you live in Spain or in Israel, you require a judicial order. Now, let's talk about the new process. In recognition that so many people require surrogates to assist them with the birth of their babies, our Ontario government has finally said we should make it a simple birth registration process. And so what will happen is that 7 days after the birth of the baby, the surrogate is asked to swear a document or affirm its contents to be true. This document is called a statutory declaration. And what she says in the document is that she had independent legal advice before she had a transfer, and that she entered into a written agreement with the intended parents, having received that independent legal advice before the transfer. So, in essence, if you want to avail yourself of the simple process, you must have had a surrogacy agreement, which was always the case and continues to be the case. Your surrogate must have independent legal advice, which means a different lawyer than the one the parents retain. And that has always been the case. So the form will have all of the information filled out about the name of the baby that she gave birth to and the name of the parents. And she promises by swearing or affirming that it is true that she did this and signs it. It's that simple. The next document is for the parents to sign. After the surrogate provides them with this document, the parents fill one out, putting down the name of the child as they would like it to appear on the birth certificate and their names. In Ontario, you may now register up to 4 people as parents of the child. And there are 2 different forms, if it's 1 or 2 parents or if it's 3 or 4 parents. So we must be careful which one we use. Most people are using 2 parents only or 1 parent. The parents also swear or affirm that they entered into a legal agreement with the surrogate and that they had a lawyer and that they agree with the consent that she has provided to relinquish any rights that she may have had to this child, and acknowledging that she gave them that document at least 7 days after the birth of the child. And then they sign that in front of somebody who can swear an affidavit or a commission. Those 2 documents are absolutely required. There is one more document that the parents must sign as well to begin the process, and that's called a statement of live birth. We've always required the parents to fill out a statement of live birth. In Ontario, a birth must be registered within 30 days. With the surrogacy, in particular when we were going to court, we wouldn't be able to do that until the judge declared that the intended parents were the only parents. And so we would advise the Office of Vital Statistics that it might take more than 30 days, and they would get the documents in advance of the court hearing and wait for the order. So now you should be able to do this within the 30 days, but if there is a delay for any reason, you just advise the office again and they wait. So the statement of live birth is filled out by the intended parents, putting in all of their information and the information related to the child. We need to have the name of the doctor or midwife who presided at the birth. And apart from that, the information is just the parents, not the surrogate on that form. And then it goes to the Office of Vital Statistics along with the 2 statutory declarations. So that 3 pieces of paper go in. Now, Ontario promised that all of this would be available online, but when the documents were released or revealed in January, they also told us that they are not able to do it online for at least another year. The spring of 2018 is the goal. So at the moment, we are sending them by courier, and you can send it by mail, but courier would be much safer. Now, once the documents arrive at the Office of Vital Statistics, the registrar will register the birth. As soon as that happens, there is one more form for the parents to fill out, and that is the application for the birth certificate. If anybody goes on the Ontario Service or Service Ontario website and looks at the information about registering a birth, they will see that the government, as do most provinces, indicate that the time to process a birth certificate can be from 6 to 15 weeks. Please do not be alarmed. That is a typical government waiver to say, you know, if anything goes wrong, we warned you. The usual process, and the one that we employ for all foreigners who are in a real hurry to get home, is the rush order application. And there is actually a guarantee for an additional $30 fee that says your birth certificate will be delivered to you within 5 business days or your money back. And I just read that directly off the form. It's a surcharge of $30. Our office can help fill out all of these documents, send everything. We can pay the fees on your behalf and ensure that the birth certificate either comes to our office or to where you reside or where you are staying if you're a foreigner. So we expect that if everybody does their bit, makes themselves available to swear the documents with us and lets us handle the sending them by courier, that you should have a birth certificate in no more than 2 weeks post-birth. With that birth certificate, you can go to a Passport Canada office in any major city in Canada with your passport application and the photo of the baby, all of which you would fill out while you're waiting for the birth certificate. And you take the birth certificate and the passport application and leave it there with a rush order fee of less than $100. And the next day, you come back and pick up the Canadian passport for your baby. So we're telling people, we hope that you should be able to leave the country within 2 to 3 weeks maximum if everyone does their bit. Having said that, we always want to make sure with foreigners, when they're booking their flight home, that they have some flexibility. It is a brand new system. Our office has just filed the first half dozen or so applications. We're in the midst of receiving birth certificates, so we're trying to maintain a lot of communication with our clients and explain what the time process is. And in fact, we're speaking directly to the Deputy Registrar's office to get them to help us process an application this morning for a foreign client that they're taking on immediately. So there's a lot of cooperation, and it's really fantastic. If you choose to do this yourself, you could, but if you would like our assistance, at the moment our office charges a fee of $1,500, and if you are a resident, you have to pay taxes on that, and we take care of arranging to fill out the paperwork with you, swearing or signing all of the documents, sending them in, helping you obtain the birth certificate as well. And for foreigners, if you need some assistance in obtaining the passport, we will do that. In order to obtain a passport in Canada, you need to either know someone in the country for 2 years who can be your guarantor, or have a lawyer sign a form that goes along with the application, another statutory declaration of sorts. So we can do that for you as well. That, in a nutshell, is this entire amazing process. There are a couple of questions I think that people have, which I'm willing to start taking now if you want to type them in. I don't know if I'm seeing them. Okay, thank you. A little bit of a delay, sorry everyone. Here they come. Is it a must that the surrogate wait 7 days? Yes, the law actually says that. I want to talk about that. It's a very good question, thank you. So there have been some rumors put out there about the 7-day period and what it means. The legislation itself is very clear. It's the Children's Law Reform Act of Ontario where you can find all this. During that 7-day period, the surrogate does not have parental rights because it says very clearly in the legislation itself that during that 7-day period, if the parents entered into a contract, which was mandatory, and the contract said that the parents were to have custody and parental rights immediately upon the birth, that is in fact enforceable. So while the surrogate has while you must wait 7 days to have it signed, the law says the parents are the parents. And the reason that they made the 7-day wait is because in other provinces, the surrogates can sign their documents immediately. And what happened was, and what we tend to see, is that people are sticking a pen and a paper underneath the surrogate's nose minutes after the birth, or in a very short period after the birth, to have her sign quickly. And while everybody is anxious, and she's more than willing to do so, when government reached out to surrogates, they found out that a lot of them felt very uncomfortable about that and just wished that they could have had a little bit more downtime to relax. And so they decided to implement the 7-day period just to give the surrogate a little bit of time, but it does not affect your right to be a parent. So the next question.
Can I just ask,
I
just cut in? I wanted to ask one other question.
Yes.
We've had a lot of questions in our office around the insurance issue, and do you have any insight as to the surrogate being, for lack of a better word, the mother for those 7 days, and what that means for insurance if we know? And that would really just be for the benefit of out-of-province intended parents or foreign intended parents.
Yeah. So, frankly, it's not clear because the law says the parents' rights under the contract will be enforced, i.e. their parental rights. It's enforceable, but they're not legally the parents yet until the registration happens. So, technically, it could be correct to say that the surrogate is still the legal mother, just as it was when we need to go to court. She wasn't taken off as the legal mother until the judge made the order. So in terms of Ontario's health insurance policy, which is based on the residency of the child, it could technically be said that the surrogate, still the legal parent who resides in Ontario, is offering residency to the baby, and therefore her health insurance in Ontario should cover the baby. However, once the baby is registered to the parents, as always, and even with the court order in all provinces, it's a retroactive order to the time of birth. So there would technically be nothing wrong with the hospital sending the parents the bill after the fact for foreigners. saying congratulations, and now that this is your baby from the moment of birth and you're not an Ontario resident, here's your bill. So I also think that this new legislation requires OHIP and hospitals to look at their policies and their legislation and perhaps amend it, but that's early yet, and there are a lot of things that still haven't been done. With interprovincial healthcare, it's not a problem because we have agreements to pay each other's provinces for healthcare. So if I go skiing in British Columbia, my Ontario healthcare will cover me if I break my leg. And so if I have a baby in another province, it's covered with my plan. They pay each other. There may be some paperwork we have to do, but they take care of it. So I hope that answers it. It's a little early to know what for certain will happen. But I would still warn anybody who's a foreigner that you might end up with a hospital bill in Ontario. So
thank you, and
sorry,
I was just going to say thank you, Cindy, and for the intended parents, as we have more cases that happen and more babies that are born to foreigners with this new process, we will be updating you continually on that, and our single embryo transfer policy, and the information that we provide of the expectancy of the potential for a hospital bill, and the cost of $750 per day is what we've been seeing. However, I did a quick tally this morning of our last 100 births that happened in Ontario, which really were in less than the last 12 months. And of those, we had less than 10 hospital bills, all being under $1,000. But I will be keeping you updated on that. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how how Ontario Health deals with this issue. So I'll pass that back to you now, Cindy.
Okay, thanks. And that's good to know. And it's really important that we continue communication as this develops. So the next question I have is someone asking whether the statement of live birth that I referred to is the same document as a long form birth certificate. So the simple answer is no, because you have to do a second process. In order to obtain the passport, you need what's called the long form birth certificate. In essence, it comes back as the statement of live birth with the official stamp, and the short form birth certificate is the thing we carry around in our wallets. But it is a separate application to get it, so that's why I say no. It will essentially be the same document, but you can't just leave it at that. I hope that answers that. I mentioned Israel and Spain. Do you have a list of countries that will accept the administrative order? Well, those are the two that I know don't. There are many countries that won't accept anything, so I think that's difficult to answer. The countries that do and should accept an administrative answer that we most usually see as surrogacy in country, surrogacy in Canada, I can tell you France is content with it as far as I know, the UK, Australia, but I always ask my intended foreign parents to obtain legal advice from a local lawyer in their country who does this work, who can tell them what they need and whether in fact now they can deal with an administrative order versus a judicial order. Because British Columbia has had a statutory declaration-based administrative order for about 3 years now, and a lot of foreigners have been able to avail themselves of that. So I have a host of foreign lawyers I speak to for clients who have given me advice, and I would recommend my clients always speak to someone, and then I speak to that lawyer if it's someone new for me. Next, will the baby have Canadian citizenship by virtue of having a Canadian passport? So, you don't need a passport to have Canadian citizenship. Under the Citizenship Act and the Immigration Act of Canada, anybody born on Canadian soil is automatically a Canadian citizen. In order to leave the country, you need a Canadian passport. So all the foreigners' babies who were born anywhere in Canada have Canadian citizenship. In order to take them home, they need a passport. Any Canadian has a baby in Canada, their baby is a Canadian citizen. In order to travel abroad or outside of Canada, they'll need a passport. And I want to just stop and say for a moment, because we talked about health insurance, residency and citizenship are two different things. Those of us who are Canadian citizens. Our health care is determined by our place of residence. So I live in Ontario. If I leave Ontario to travel, and let's say I want to go south for the winter, which would be lovely, for 6 months, I would lose my health care in Ontario for being out of this province for so long. So what we would see for those older people who go to Florida or California for the winter is, the snowbirds as we call them, is that they fly home for a week just to keep their feet on their provincial soil to maintain their health care. So although you go home with a Canadian citizen as your baby, it's not entitled to health care unless it's a resident in the province for more than half the year. Next question. If we would like to do this on our own as an Ontario resident, do you or the government site have the process outlined in a concise format? So, as I said, our office is more than happy to assist people at the fee of $1,500. If you wish to do it on your own, you go on the government website and it's all there. I don't know how to define concise for the government, I'm sorry. But it's all on their website, and there are phone numbers you can call. But yes, our office certainly helps with very concise documentation. We will work it all out with you and offer that assistance. Next question. Do you know if the UK accepts the administrative order? I think I just answered that. According to the lawyers I have spoken with, yes, it should be fine, as people from British Columbia have been able to do that. And for then any of you who are in the UK, Leah and I are going to be there in March, and we're going to do a couple of client evening information sessions, so stay tuned for that. Next, what happens if the surrogate and the intended parents do not have legal advice before the transfer, but still have a written agreement between them, which is essentially a surrogate agreement? So you bypass getting legal advice. You cannot qualify for this administrative order. You would have to go through the court process and explain why there wasn't independent legal advice. So frequently, we have had repeat surrogates who are very confident in the process, have received extremely good legal advice, and feel very comfortable waiving their right to have independent legal advice for a second surrogacy agreement. And we've always been able to do that for people. And when we wrote their affidavits for the court order, we would say to the judge, waive the right, having had it once before from a fertility lawyer who practiced in Canada, and the judges would accept that. So that would still be the case. It would appear with the new law that that is not the case. You must have independent legal advice to enter into this administrative format. So what you can do with an experienced surrogate who has had it before is work with her right to the point of the final contract. And I've done this already. And then have her go to another lawyer to review the final contract, who in the cases where I've done it, has offered the legal advice for a very reduced fee, having usually been the surrogate's lawyer on the previous agreement. So that is an alternative for those of you who are hoping to save a little bit of money on legal costs. But I think the reason that the government wants the surrogate to have a lawyer is for everyone's protection. We don't want surrogates being taken advantage of. It is technically legally their baby until the birth and the documents are signed. And so the government can't be seen to be assisting people in taking babies from others without knowing that they had legal advice. And I think overall it's a good policy because you wouldn't want a surrogate to come back in the future and say, I didn't know what I was doing and that is my baby. And it's really important because with the administrative birth certificate process, there is no longer a requirement to do a DNA test. So you may not know if you don't have it done whether in fact it was her baby, which is why it's important to work with a good agency to avoid that. Now, another question. If we would like to do this on our own, oh, that's the same question that somebody asked before. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. Maybe I'm just going to hit the garbage can icon here and see if there's more. Yeah, I think those are all the questions I am seeing.
Well, thank you, Cindy. It's been very informative, and I'm sure that as intended parents or as surrogates, intended parents, people on this webinar have time to digest the information. They may have more information for you, and as it's in the chat section as well, Cindy is with Hope Springs Fertility Law. If you haven't connected with her, you can speak to your case manager about connecting with her. As well, we hope to have a legal webinar each month going forward with different topics. So if those of you on this webinar have questions that you'd like our lawyers to or lawyers that we work with rather to answer, we'd love to put those questions forward, and we really appreciate you taking the time to listen in and get some information on this exciting new, more affordable process in Ontario, and we look forward to welcoming your babies in the upcoming months. And that will be the end of the webinar. So again, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It was a real pleasure, and thank you all for taking the time, and thank you very much to CFC for organizing, and I think this will be really helpful for a lot of people.